Hi, thank you for introducing me, Elizabeth, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm here with my friend Deborah at the computer and my husband John manning the video for cable TV. We used to live here near here on Marlborough Street, but I've never been to this library before. It's very sweet. I just became a chicken and duck farmer this year. Deb Carey asked me to be a presenter after I sent her and Elizabeth Marcus a note about the addition of duck and chicken eggs to my business. Deb was interested to know how I got into the food business, what I've done right, and what I wish I'd done differently. How she knew I'd done things wrong, I don't know, but I have. Elizabeth Marcus asked me to talk about the ducks, raising ducks and chickens together. And I want to let you know how they fit into the organic gardening and why on earth I decided to raise them. I know many of you are among the choir, but I'd also like to talk a bit about resilience along the way and taking back our food supply, because in large part that's what I'm doing in growing good organic food for John and myself and a few other people. I've had organic gardens since we moved to Newbury in 1989, and at our current address since 1998. When we moved into 162 High Road, most of the backyard, about 100 feet square, had been dug up for a septic system. I proceeded to have a farmer harrow the way back area of about 30 by 80 feet for my vegetable garden, and then had him haul in 36 yards of horse manure. My neighbors thought I was nuts to dig up the only remaining patch of grass in the backyard. I thought they were right when I found no real soil, but Newbury clay to work with. I cried while I planted my tomatoes that year. Even with the manure tilled in, it was still lumpy, hard clay. Nevertheless, I brought in yards of loam, and I planted blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, raspberries, grapes, fruit trees, nut trees, and lots of perennial flowers and perennial and annual vegetables. I weeded and hoed and planted, made stands for full spectrum lights, for starting seeds in the cellar, and I brought my excess plants in the spring to my colleagues, all the while I worked in the software industry for various companies in Greater Boston. In 2008, my mother came to live with us when she needed assisted living due to Alzheimer's disease. It took a while to get adjusted to that change, but she helped us with household chores, helped us put up a hoop house so I could extend the gardening season, and here she's obviously supervising, filled lots of pots and helped me plant. We did lots of projects together, like making stepping stones for the garden. She had a very interesting sense of humor. I opened my gardening business in 2009 to sell plants, flowers, and extra vegetables because I knew we needed something to do to keep us busy and purposeful and to keep Mother in the now. I also figured I would need some way to make money after being away from the technology sector for however many years it would turn out to be before she died. 2009 is also the year that John and I started keeping bees to help with pollination of our crops. The bees have been great for the pollination, though they're a pretty expensive venture, especially replacing them due to swarms or dying or just disappearing, as you may have heard about in the presentation about bees. Here's Deborah helping me one day, and John working the hives. The bees are so industrious, they really worked well on our property. And they don't take that much time, maybe a couple of hours every week or so. That's an important consideration that Ben Falk talks about in The Resilient Farm and Homestead. That is, the time and perhaps the cost that various additions to your landscape will take to maintain. We joined the Newburyport Farmers Market that year to sell flowers, and while it was fun, and it got us out of the house once a week, it didn't end up being as financially successful as I'd hoped, and it was a great deal of extra work. But some of my customers saw us first at the market, so it was not all bad, and the music was great. It was just too hard to compete on price with farmers who had acres while I have a half an acre under cultivation. My grandmother Rosie taught me to garden organically, though she didn't really call it that. She just composted and used manure and grew wonderful healthy food. I grew up listening to my mom tell us about Rosie's cold cellar that my grandfather had built in their new house. We visited in Hamp a couple of summers ago, falls ago. And of her putting up vegetables and chickens, some that my grandfather got as payment for insurance when his farmer clients didn't have the cash during the Depression. My grandparents knew about sharing and community and resilience. My business, which I called Rosie's Garden, has evolved over the last few years as I moved my selling place from the front of High Road to the back of Plummer's Lane, to the back off Plummer's Lane. The front of the house, directly across from the marsh, is very windy, so the wind kept blowing my kiosk and plants over it. Plus, I couldn't get any work done if I was selling stuff out front. So Mom died after Christmas in 2010, and I had time to rethink what I wanted to do. So in 2011, I decided that the CSA approach to selling would be best for my situation. I could plan on a certain type and number, there you go, of vegetables and flowers to grow throughout the season, and could have scheduled pickup times that would allow me to do all the work I needed to do to get the produce ready. My customers get fresher vegetables than their share price would get at the market, and they get nicer, fresher bouquets than at a florist or purchased as a bunch from a store. And I get a fairly consistent income for about 7 months of the year. However, I was looking for ways to have some money coming in during the whole year. And when I thought of that, I thought of eggs. And when I thought of eggs, I thought of chickens. So my desire to raise chickens started a few years back, but my decision this year was prompted by the USDA announcement that it was planning to approve China as a processor of chickens from approved countries such as the US and UK. Now, China is not known for its health and safety measures, so the idea of eating meat that had been processed in China and sent back here for US consumers really did not appeal to me. The EcoWatch newsletter reported that the USDA approved China a couple of weeks ago without doing any inspections since 2013. So I'm happy to have my own chickens now. We have several breeds of laying hens for eggs. I tried to choose the hens that laid large and extra large eggs, but I did get some that lay medium eggs. And I wanted to see which breeds I liked best, so I bought many different types of chickens. I buy the Jumbo Cornish Cross periodically for meat birds because they can't survive past 10 weeks or so without developing heart or leg problems. So I don't feel too guilty about slaughtering them. That's the kind you ate. They get big and they eat a lot. But in reality, every time you buy a chicken from the store, you've slaughtered a chicken and you don't know where it's been, what it's eaten, or how it was treated. Raising chickens provides eggs and meat for the table, manure and organic pest control for your gardens. My desire to raise ducks came about earlier this year after I read Elliot Colving's 4-season harvest book and Ben Falk's The Resilient Farm and Homestead. Their writing about ducks convinced me that ducks would be an enhancement to the organics in my garden. Plus, they lay really delicious omega-3 rich eggs. They provide organic pest control, and you can use them for meat too, just like the chickens. Before I bought any birds, that was a double yolker.
I got a double yolker tonight.
Did you? A double
Chicken.
yolker. Yeah, chicken and double yolker. I thought it was like Snoopy. Before I bought any birds, I read all about the different breeds of ducks and chickens, how many eggs they lay on average, how much noise they make, how gentle or aggressive they are, and how to take care of them. There are lots of charts on the webs, and the hatcheries have pretty good descriptions. I wanted to get ducks especially that were relatively quiet, prolific layers, and wouldn't stand out too much when they were foraging because we have a lot of hawks that fly over the backyard. Domestic ducks don't really fly, so they can't run fast enough to get away from predators. And the only ducks I have that actually run, actually maybe the only ducks that actually run are the Indian runner ducks. And they don't waddle, but the rest of them do. They just go this way. Well, you've seen them, right?
So they're bred to not fly or
They're too heavy.
too heavy?
Like the Ruans, they look like mallards, but they weigh several pounds more than mallards. And they're tame. They're domestic ducks, and they don't go. Some of them do. Some ducks still fly, and some ducks, like call ducks, make a hell of a lot of noise. The females call, but the runner ducks make enough noise too. They just never said anything about that.
Surprise.
So Coleman and Falk both write of their Indian runner ducks, and it turns out that they lay about 300 eggs a year.
Wow.
That's not bad. So I selected a pair of chocolate runners and a fawn and white runner. The fawn and white runner was just too cute as a baby. But I thought she was awfully cute. I also decided on khaki Campbell ducks because they can lay 320 eggs a year or more. And I put 2 khaki Campbell ducks and a drake in the shopping basket. Then I did an ill-considered thing. May not have been wrong, but it was ill-considered. I don't know that I really wish I'd done it differently, but the hatchery was going to charge me $60 extra because I was getting 6 ducks, and they have to put a heating pack in if you buy fewer than 10 ducks. So I did some more reading on the website and figured that 4 straight-run Ruan ducks would cost me $25, $22.50 or something. And the Ruans are meat birds, and they look like mallards, only bigger. My thoughts were that we would eat them, and since we had roast ducks several times a year, that seemed like a thing to do. As they grew, I realized that we had 2 drakes and 2 ducks. So we did eat 1 drake, because too many drakes was like boys fight. But I reasoned we could breed the others to make baby ducklings to eat, so we've kept the other 3. So straight run, if you want to know, means that they don't sex them first before they send them. If you buy a female, they sex it and they make sure it's a female, on ducks anyway. The chocolate runner lays a very beautiful, large blue egg. The fawn and white's egg is white, and so far they've been smaller, but she started laying a little later. The khaki Campbell lays large white eggs. The Ruan's eggs are blue. Now this is the runner duck's blue egg and 2 khaki Campbell eggs. The Ruan eggs are blue too, but smaller than the runners and the Campbells. Almost every day now, I get 2 large white and 1 large blue egg. So sometimes I get a second blue one or a second white one. I mean a third white one. But nothing prepared me for the personality of my chocolate runner duck. She's very vocal. She is very sure that if she calls to me, I'll come and take care of her needs. When she was younger and hungry, she would let out with a quack, 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 and it sounded just like a cartoon duck. I swear to God, my next door neighbor used to just guffaw whenever he heard her do that. Quack, quack, quack.
She has you well trained.
She is the least afraid of me, and she'll actually eat stuff out of my hand now. But it's not all that pleasant because they really grab with their beaks, I guess they're a beak. You've probably heard the line, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Well, it's true. If you're wondering whether you have a drake or a duck, pick it up. If it quacks, it's a duck. Drakes make this little hissing sound. They don't quack at all.
Really, that's odd.
Yes, but it's really cool because it's one of the first ways you can tell whether you've got a duck or a drake.
Uh-huh.
Although I was pretty sure just because the drakes started getting that green coloring on their heads, because they do look just like mallards. Okay, at any rate, the additional 4 ducks meant an addition to the duck house, which ran a couple of $100. And the Ruans only lay between 25 and 125 eggs a year, but they eat every day. So in retrospect, I probably should have paid the extra $60 shipping charge. But the drake we kept is very beautiful. Did you show? You probably showed that picture already.
Yeah.
And the ducks lay the blue eggs, and I will hatch some in the spring for roast duckling. They're very good foragers, so they don't eat that much, especially in the summer. Even with the additional cost, the chicken coop and pack under the coop were about 4 times the cost of the 2 duck houses. Part of that was shipping charges. But the coop is big and strong and houses 2 dozen chickens, while I house 9 ducks in the 2 duck houses, which are actually repurposed structures. This one was a garbage can enclosure, and this one was a double dog house, and we edited them, as you can see, by putting the hardware cloth and hardware to so I could get in at them.
They're beautiful.
And they're not bad, you know, but they're tall, you know, you need to have the height.
That one looks, the one on the left looks like a little caravan.
Ah, yeah, well, that one was quite a bit more expensive than this was. So, at any rate, it was hard to find reasonably priced duck houses that were large enough, actually. So it's pretty easy raising ducks if you look at the world like a duck sees it. Namely that we are predators. Both our eyes are in the front of our face, and we're big, and we walk upright. If we walk slowly, talk softly, and sing to them, and of course bring them food and water, they'll still be afraid of you, but they won't be terrified. They need copious amounts of clean, fresh water to wash their eyes because they get mucus in their eyes. And they also drink a great deal. There they go. They need the water to wash down their food because, like chickens, they have no teeth. Their water bowls get very muddy, so they need to be refreshed at least 2 or 3 times a day. And I keep them in a separate run from the chickens. I separate it to avoid the ducks messing up the chickens' water and the chickens eating the ducks' food and messing up their bedding. They go in there and they look for bugs. It's lovely.
Is that their water bowl that they're in? Or is that a little pond kind of thing?
That is their water bowl. What they do is they jump into the water bowl.
Okay.
Even now, I give them water, fresh water every morning. The first thing that Khaki Campbell does is hop into it and bathe before anybody else can get in there. She's in there having a bath and getting her. Now, I do have bigger bowls that I'll talk about. So ducks like fresh, succulent greens and grass and bugs. So when they're small, you cut up baby greens and fresh grass into their water dish. They grow much faster than chickens do. It's amazing. The picture with the ducks eating the greens in the bowl shows them at about 3 weeks old. This next picture shows my red star chickens at 5 weeks old. And you can see that they're much, much smaller. Of course, they're still smaller. Now, chickens are smart and trainable with a little bit of work. Well, ducks are very smart birds, too. When mine were about 6 weeks old, the heat lamp in their house shattered. Since it was red and on a timer, I didn't really notice that it wasn't still lighting up the inside. So I tried to get to the ducks to go into the house at night, And they stood there in a group and said, no way. It was like, They wouldn't move. They would not move. So I looked inside and saw the broken glass. And I think I spent about a half an hour taking the bedding out and putting fresh bedding in. And it wasn't pleasant at 8:30 at night. And they went right in after that. You know, they're not stupid. They are pack birds. They move together in a group almost all the time. We had to move their house into a corner of the run so they all wouldn't rush back and forth from corner to corner and not go into the house. I finally tried singing to them at night when it was time to go in the house. And I'm not a singer, but they don't criticize my voice, and I hope you won't either, because I'm going to sing. What I did was sing several verses of Goodnight Irene.
Oh.
So I sang, Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night. And I did that for a couple of nights. And then I'd say good night to them all. And then one night I just stood there at the where I come into the run and I sang. And they just filed right into the house. I didn't have to motion them in or anything. So they're kind of cool that way. So the Stories Guide to Raising Ducks book by Dave Holderreed said he would get his ducks to come inside from foraging way out in the fields, using a long bamboo pole and kind of doing this kind of thing, herding them towards the enclosure. I tried that for a couple of weeks. John would help sometimes. But if I wanted them to turn right, they would turn left. And if I wanted them to turn left or go straight, they'd turn right or go backwards. I mean, it didn't seem to matter. And it got to be frustrating for all of us, and they were very, very terrified. So with the chickens, all I have to do is say, here chick, here chick, here chick, 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 here chick, and they come running. They're expecting treats, of course, you know. It's all part of the training. The ducks would often move towards their gate when they heard me calling the chickens, because they want to be good duckies, you know, so they knew when I was calling the chickens that it was probably time for them to go too. But it wasn't consistent, and several times one of the ducks would get separated and have trouble finding her way back. So I thought I would try a song to let them know it was time to come back to their run. And for a couple of days, when they were out, you know, out mingling with the chickens and all, I'd say, come on duckies, it's time to come inside. And I'd kind of motion them down the path. The third day I sang it, they were way the hell out in the back of the gardens. It's about 100 feet away or more. And I sang, and they stopped foraging, and they just went right in single file all the way back to their run. It sure beats the bamboo method.
Yeah.
So one nice difference between ducks and chickens is that while chickens scratch to find grubs and to dirt bait, the ducks don't do that. They use their bills to make holes in the soft, wet ground to find bugs and grubs and slugs and worms. So they will aerate your lawn or pasture, mow it, fertilize it, and rid it of grubs all at the same time. How nice is that? They do need room to forage on grass or pasture that has been mown some, because they can't eat mature grass that's split and has a stalk. And they can turn a grassy area into a muddy one in a week if they don't get moved or have enough space to go. They really like to swim. Yeah. Okay. The first thing our fawn and white runner duck did when I gave them a small bowl, I mean it was like, oh, I think it's like this big, the small bowl, but they were little, was to just jump right in. And it was supposed to be for drinking. Well, I didn't know about them jumping into drinking water at that point. But she's still the last one out of the pool. Ducks actually need a pond or a pool at least 6 inches deep to procreate. But otherwise, they don't have to swim. and commercially raised ducks rarely get to swim.
Hmm.
I have 2 rubber feed bowls for them. One holds 4 gallons and one holds about 8 gallons, so it's really big, which I used until they got their second run fenced. Now they have an unfinished pond that's been too full of rainwater to finish the rest of the digging until spring comes. So that's something, another thing that we could have done better, because if we'd finished it in the summer when it was drier, we would have the liner in and everything, and the ducks undermine the edge of the pond, so we're gonna have a lot more work to do when it dries up. My ducks have really enjoyed the pond, so I wondered what they would do the first morning it was frozen. I took a series of shots. I came prepared because I said, oh, that pond is frozen. And they came eagerly into the large run and went right over to the pond. And they stood there for a minute, and a couple finally ventured onto the ice. But there was much quacking and confusion, like, what do we do now? I mean, it was just really a hoot. If you're interested in keeping ducks, you should know that you really need to have at least 2 ducks, because they, like chickens, are social animals. You really don't want to have just 1 chicken either. If you get a drake, he can handle 2 or 3 chicks, 2 or 3 ducks. But you don't need drakes unless you want to breed them. In nature, though, there's always some of each. So I chose to get some drakes. I like having one around. The males tend to protect the females in return for having their ways with them upon occasion. And they're very nice to look at. You don't need roosters to have laying hens either. But both the drakes and the roosters keep a sharp eye out for predators, while their hens and their ducks are foraging, and they make a big racket when they see a predator. When they see a hawk, when they see a cat, they almost cackle. The chickens, the roosters cackle like hens laying an egg.
That's an amazing rooster.
So that's our golden lace Polish.
Goodness.
And that's what he's doing. He's on guard right there in that picture. While all the other, he is too, but he likes to be, he's little. So I bought a couple of roosters too, although that one was one of our free birds on the lookout. So the chickens help me in the garden by being ready to grab any bug or worm that my hoeing or digging disturbs, and they're good advertisements for eggs, as you can see. There you go. A note here on the hatcheries. McMurray's offers a free rare bird when you order chicks, unless you uncheck a box on the online order form. And I figured out after getting 3 free roosters, it's true they're rare roosters, but it seems to be a way for them to get rid of some excess males. The last one I got is a female, but at any rate, it does introduce you to some rare breeds that you might not have gotten otherwise. The golden lace Polish, the buff Cochin, he's got feathered legs, and he's a massive bird, and a silver Americano, which is very young still. Also, they guarantee that their sexing of chickens is 90% accurate. And sexing means determining their gender. So that means you'll probably have 1 in 10 purchased hens that turn out to be a rooster. That, the Blue Wheaton Americana was supposed to be a girl. He's very gentle and protective and absolutely gorgeous. This black Australorp I purchased, but he's very gentle too, and he makes such lovely sounds when he finds food. If you buy heavy breeds, the extra roosters don't need to be a problem because you can eat them, but if you're counting on eggs, you should consider buying a few more hens than you need. Duck sexing, on the other hand, appears to be more accurate, and they band their legs with little different colored tape so you can tell which is who until the bands fall off. by that time you sort of can recognize them.
How many roosters do you have now?
Well, we ate one who was aggressive, and we haven't eaten the other one that was supposed to be a girl. And so now I've got 1, 2, 3, the 3 that you saw 3, 4, 3 free ones, or 4 free ones, and him.
Sunday you all, they're okay? Just hanging
Yeah,
out together?
actually, 2 roosters you cannot have. 2 roosters and they will fight.
Uh-huh.
3 roosters, 4 roosters, they don't fight.
Really? Huh, I didn't know that.
And I was very surprised because the buff cochin just started crowing this week, and he's the same age as the Australorp. He's a sweetie. He chortles when he finds food. And when he was a baby, he had like this very melodic, like a nightingale or something, the sound that he had. Because we had him in the living room for a week.
Jeez.
So ducks are pretty hardy, and they could sleep outside without any protection, which is why down comforters keep us warm. However, it's best to keep them in a secured duck house and protected area at night. It's also best to have a perimeter fence to keep out dogs, foxes, coyotes, cats, and other hungry predators. We haven't done that yet, but I only let them out for a few hours in the afternoon to forage. We will install some movable fencing in the spring, and I'll fence some of the garden to keep the birds out, or most of them will eat succulent baby plants. So one nice thing, or another nice thing about ducks, is they only need their bedding freshened every day or every other day. You don't have to clean out the house more than 2 or 3 times a year. If your house is tall enough to accommodate their height and the bedding as it gets higher and higher. With the chickens, I have to clean the coop every week and fluff the litter every day. I am now an expert litter fluffer. And as I told you the other day, it really does amuse me when I think of my LinkedIn endorsements for Oracle and SQL Server expertise while I'm fluffing litter. Ducks need nesting areas in their houses, or they'll lay eggs almost anywhere. I usually keep them in the house until after 8 a.m. so I can collect the eggs. Their nests need to be larger than chicken nests. So this is the chicken nest, and this looks pretty big in that picture, but they're only this big, and the duck nests are quite a bit larger.
So they all lay in the same nest, do they?
I have 8 chicken nests.
Uh-huh.
I have 2 duck nests, because I only have 6 female ducks. And a duck nest is good for 3 or 4 female ducks. And the chickens, I have 8 of them, and they lay in all of them, but I have 21 chickens, 21 hens in there. But they do lay in the same nest as somebody else did, yeah, and they don't break the eggs. But something that's very interesting this past week, I have wooden eggs in there. I still have the wooden eggs in there for training them that this is where to lay your eggs. And yesterday and today I have found 3 wooden eggs in one nesting area, so then the girls have moved the eggs, and I don't know how they do it. It's kind of amusing. So their nests need to be larger than chicken nests, and they make a bowl in the bedding to lay them deep, as you could see before. So all in all, I think ducks are less work than chickens, and they can get by on less feed if they can forage. But there's no reason you can't have both, as long as you have the time to tend them and someone to care for them if you have to be away, which is difficult to find someone to care for them. It takes me about 2 hours a day split between morning and night chores to care for all the birds. Probably a half hour less when I don't have meat birds. And it would take less time if I had automatic waterers and other time-saving equipment. But then I wouldn't get to spend as much time with and make sure they're all okay. In return, we've had lots of eggs to sell. I haven't had a tick on me all summer. My vegetables didn't get decimated by slugs. The asparagus beetles were all gobbled up. And we'll have a great pile of compost next year from the shavings and manure I removed from the coops. So I've cycled back to talking about compost. And I will say that Elliot Coleman's writing about deep organic gardening, cover crops, and no-till methods, and Ben Falk's book on resilience and homesteading, especially in the light of the climate crisis we're now facing, have given me a better understanding of some of the talents and knowledge we have to hold on to if we're going to survive and thrive. This is actually a reading from last summer on our deck thermometer. Now, it wasn't 120 yet, but this is the first year that it said 120 on any one day, and it said it on several days. When my mom was living with us, it never went past 100. So that was 2008 to 2010. So in the past couple of years, it's gone up. Their techniques of soil building and management can also sequester carbon in the soil. As Kristen Olson relates in her book, The Soil Will Save Us. And I knew about carbon sequestration, but some of these people are thinking maybe even 20% of the carbon that is going just into the atmosphere could get stored in the soil. So many people today have no experience with how food grows, or what nutrients are needed, or where it grows, or how to build healthy soil. Everything, including vegetables, chickens, ducklings, and eggs, comes from the grocery store. While I don't have room for pigs or steer or even lamb, probably, I can farm birds and vegetables on a small scale. I clipped this cartoon a few years ago, and I thought I'd share it with you. Can you see that? Free-range beans, vine-ripened potatoes, and we cater to city folk. Yeah, I'd really like to be able to sell my eggs on a shares-type basis, and so far I have several people buying them regularly. But now I'm getting 1.5 dozen chicken eggs a day, and half a dozen duck eggs every other day. I buy all my feed from Essex County Co-op, and I only buy USDA organic feed, which at the very least means no GMO products. But it also means it's very expensive. And I add an omega-3 supplement to the chicken layer feed. And the foraging adds to the omega-3 content as well. So we've put a small cooler inside the front double doors for self-service on the honor system. And if you're interested, please see me later or leave us your email address and phone number. Are there any questions? Did you do that before I asked?
Oh, no.